the memory of the Irish men and women that took part in the war. Again, we have a knock connection with Ronan, as his cousin Dermot O'Sullivan attended the school, and I believe Dermot's mother is here with us as well this evening, so you're all very welcome. So enough of that. You didn't come here to hear me speak. I'd like to move on to our speakers, and I'll introduce them as they come up to speak. First, we have Noel Coghlan. Noel left the school in 1957. Noel has travelled over from Belgium to be with us today, so that's hugely appreciated. Noel graduated from the London School of Economics. He joined the Economist Intelligence Unit and worked from there to the World Bank before moving to the European Commission. As I said, he now lives in Belgium and is an avid historian, has contributed to a variety of journals. And I'm going to let Noel come up and introduce his talk, but he's going to talk about a man that is very close to his heart.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. Soyez numerous, as we would say in Belgium. You're numerous, and that's great. My name is Noel Coghlan. In addition to the various things which Lawton has mentioned, I was for 2 years a regular officer in the Royal Artillery. We'll come to that now. It's a great privilege to be here, and I'd like to thank Lawton for inviting me, and Dr. Murphy, I think, is now retired from senior action, our headmaster, for facilitating us, and particularly for facilitating me with that easel which contains a tableau, or holds a tableau of the badges of various Irish regiments. We'll come to that in fullness of time, probably during questions. It's a great privilege to be here with a bit beyond my station as first speaker, but Dr. Patrick McCarthy, who's a doyen of Irish military history, getting a bit above and beyond myself, as you would say in rural Ireland, but there we are. Now, let's move on though to the hero of the evening, the good Major Jack Coghlan, late of the Royal Irish Regiment and of the Indian Police Service. Father of Peter, class of 26, and brother of Donal Coghlan, class of 25, and my surrogate father, who is the subject of my talk. Jack was born in the closing years of the reign of our dear Queen, Victoria, by the grace of God. And like many people who have the extraordinary honour of being born and brought up in that particularly peaceful and prosperous time, he had a very conventional, I would say, stifling upbringing, from which I'm very glad to say he recovered with advance once he joined the army. But I think we have to put ourselves back into the world of the Belle Époque, the fin de siècle. We call it in French, we call it the Belle Époque. It was a very, very different world from our world. In some respects, it was much more tolerant than our world. In other respects, it was very intolerant. The culture of the day emphasized the physical. And men were expected to be manly, a characteristic which competitive sports cultivated, and blood was spilt. Many an eye was open, and many a mouth was shut. Many an eye was closed, and many a mouth was shut on the rugby fields and hockey fields. Hockey was game, and cricket here in college and in those colleges with which they played notably Clongowes. On the other hand, the bookworm, long-haired pastiche, horror of horrors, dare I say it, what was known to the age as a new woman. Short-haired, opinionated, ready to share those opinions with anybody who had the misfortune to come in contact with her. They constituted the enemy within. And for these people, there was zero tolerance. They were ostracized, and I think that probably would be putting it rather mildly. To a generation which brought up on the daring-do novels of Charles Kingsley, Henry Rider Haggard. Remember, they had me watching King Solomon's Mines, which was one of his novels. And Rudyard Kipling, war was not an apparition. Quite the contrary. War was seen as a fact, feature of international relations, an ordeal which tested the moral fibre of the nation. You would come across that whether you're talking about 1916 or whether you're talking about the First World War. And indeed, that kind of thinking resurfaced in the Second World War and lingered a little bit when talked about, but not it didn't. In the words of the Austrian philosopher and man of letters Stefan Zweig, who was very, very influential, war was seen as romantic and heroic, an extension of the dueling fraternities of the German universities. One might almost say it was the norm, albeit it was a norm in which victory was to be achieved not by compromise, not by negotiation, but by annihilation. L'offensive d'illustrious, in the words of the French military manuals of the day. Even Tom Kettle, whom I wrote an article last month, published last month. Even Tom Kettle was the most peaceful of men, would go so far as to say he would rather die wrapped in the Belgian tricolor than live in disarm in Dublin. And that is precisely what he did. And he was killed at the Somme. So when we come to think in those terms, Pierce's notion of a blood sacrifice, repulsive as it all seems to us today, was actually partly the norm of that period. And it's perhaps the extreme, but it was what was the thing. The world of Belle Époque was a Darwinian world. A world of hierarchies, racial and social, and I'll get right on to this thing, and a world in which the individual was expected to better himself. Women bettered themselves by marrying. There were very, very few professions open to women, and medicine perhaps was the main outlet of the professional level, but there were problems about women doctors. In short, it was, for men, marrying, the equivalent of marrying up was attaining a social and professional position which at least equaled and ideally was superior to that of his patient parents. It was, in short, a Spencerian world of unending progress, social and material, albeit it was a world in which one had to fight for one's position, almost literally. Grandfather Coghlan may well have been a suffragist, imposing a regime of newspaper reading and political commentary on his daughters. The outrage of his dear wife, my grandmother, destroyed her prospects. But his commitment to the prevailing philosophy of getting on in life was total and absolute. He was acutely conscious that as a senior clerk in the Board of Works and a graduate of the so-called Royal University, in fact, since he had jumped up the examination board, he was not a gentleman. Sorry, not a gentleman. Many things, but a gentleman he was not. At best, he was a half-sir, not quite somebody to whom one would lift one's hat were one to cross on the street, but somebody whom one might give a curt nod or acknowledgement. My good man, do get on with business, would you? And that was it. That, he was determined, was about to change. and his sons, of whom he had 5, were to be the medium of change. Our man Jack, the hero of the evening, was dispatched to Willow Park and subsequently to Black Rock, where Papa Coghlan could keep a close eye on him and his siblings, male and female. By 1913, our man Jack, now all of 17, had progressed to UCD, where he enrolled in the Faculty of Arts. His first year was uneventful. The duties of a student of the time was simply to take reasonable, to memorize them and to regurgitate them on demand. But that demand rarely occurred except in the examination hall. And there it was the Germans, well, the Austrian German, the Germans would say, menschlich geprüft. That's quite translated to English, but it means we close our eyes to many a slip and many a gap in the narrative. Once a week, one could travel along to the LNH, in physics here to Newman's house, and listen to young men being brilliant, particularly coherent, brilliant things. One has to cut one's coat according to one's cloth. Now, this sort of humdrum existence was rudely interrupted in August 1914, and contrary to all expectations, even as late as the end of July, Churchill, of all people, who was possibly better informed than many, was saying, no, it won't erupt into a war, we'll manage this. The war, in fact, engulfed pretty well all of Europe and the greater part of the world, civilized and uncivilized. But, it's an ill wind that blows no good. And Papa Coghlan seized his chance. He who held the King's commission was, by definition, a gentleman, and and in the Irish regiments, the expenses that came with that exalted state were perfectly manageable. Get by. Strings were pulled, and our man Jack, now 18, was recommended for a commission. Not just any old commission, but a regular commission in Ireland's prime regiment, the Royal Irish Regiment, the 18th of Foot, at the age of gentility for the famille Coghlan, I am glad to say, at dawn. What all quite gentlemen, but we are well on the way. With a single pip on his cuff and Sam Brown gleaming brightly in the midday sun, the newly commissioned Jack trotted off to France, and after many comings and goings, joined his regiment just in time to take his part in the slaughter of the Somme, an experience which led him to conclude, surprise, surprise, that war was perhaps a somewhat overrated activity. A change of scene was called for, and it so often happens in this odd world, it came through a chance meeting in a pub at Eastwood, an aide cafe behind the lines. The newly formed tank corps was expanding, and it was seeking experienced officers, particularly infantry officers, because the tanks were going to work, I won't say hand in glove, but work in close collaboration with the infantry. By the time a second bottle of an absolutely miserable Van Patron had met its doom, Jack had signed up for the tanks, committed to rolling through mud and the mud to the green fields beyond. Green fields were particularly enticing. The mud and blood part of it was rather less so in Jack's view. And so it came to pass that as I was relaxing after a repas Vienna cozy and a decent puss cafe, dancing to the Guardian on a wet autumn evening, my phone rang, and a voice in the heavily accented Dutch of Westlanders inquired, "Spreek ik met meneer Coghlan, Noel?" I said, I'm taken completely aback, I don't know what you do. I responded, yeah, well, I'm a VP of the air. Well, I didn't get very far, because the next thing was my interlocutor informed me that he represented the village of Bucapella on the Upsalian people board, where a monument to my dear uncle was about to be erected. And the village in a month's time, and the village and indeed parish beyond would be honoured if I would join them on a great day. Okay? And to get down to Coghlan. Fascinated, I sought further details and learned that unbeknown to his nearest and dearest, our man Jack was a hero in this little corner of West Flandern. The story unfolded, and quite a story it was. It appears that the worthy Jack, by then an acting captain, had set out in the early hours, the very early hours, of Tuesday, October the 7th, 1917, bent on capturing the little Flemish village of Coghlan, or King and Country, was the expression one used, King and Country. Well, unfortunately, everything didn't go quite according to plan, and as Jack brought his tank to a halt before the local pub, simply to steady himself and his crew, unfortunately, the German artillery had registered the crossroads, as I in a previous existence would have done, and with one shell, there ended the career of Damon II, Jack's tank D-29. Well, matters might have ordinarily rested there, it might have pardoned nothing more. Had the people of Coghlan not warned the young Irish officer who lost his tank outside our local in a gallant, albeit not quite successful attempt to free their village of what little was left of them, very little was left of the apart from the pub, from the depredations of a marauding Hun. Thanks to a reconstruction grant, the wreck of his tank Damon II was acquired by the village from the army and in 1921, but alas, and it breaks my heart to have to say so, it was confiscated by the Germans in 1941. Not quite the symbol of the new order in Europe, they said. So they didn't want this to demoralize the good people of West Flanders, and they took it away. Outrage, outrage, because whatever one might say, our Flemish friends are Coghlan. They hold our money tightly, you know? And when they buy something, they intend to keep that something. They didn't take this line down, as the centenary of the Great War approached, the good people of Coghlan decided that they would erect a monument on the village green to Jack and his regiment Royal tanks, and they would construct, and this was absolutely incredible, they would construct a full-scale working replica of his tank. About 105,000 euros has gone into this project from a small village of, I suppose, about 1,700 inhabitants, but slightly more than that if you take the parish beyond. An amazing achievement. I've just come, an annual commemoration has been held every year since 2009, which I and Jack's daughter Mary are regularly invited. Indeed, I was in Coghlan last Sunday and at the commemoration 2 weeks previously. Well, Jack went on to serve at the tanks at Cambrai, where he was awarded the military cross, but he found the tanks like sardines in a tin, my boy, like sardines in a tin, stuck in hot, totally intolerable. So he decided, talk about polarized thinking, he decided that he would transfer to Royal Flying Corps, in which the life expectancy of a newly fledged flying officer was all of 5 days. Now, there was no guarantee it would actually be 5 days, but there's a reasonable expectation it would be probably 5 days. So, some extraordinary luck. Jack actually lived to tell the tale of these glorious, if not always victorious, and went on to serve. Following the reorganization of services in 1926, he was offered and accepted a post with the Indian Police Service, during which his 2 children Peter and Mary, Peter, class of 36, were born. Peter at last proved to be a delicate child. I think that this is in the obit, which appears in the chronicle. This is a delicate child, and he contracted TB, which necessitated his removal from the college. That's just totally normal practice. He died in December 1938, and Jack never ever recovered from this loss. Never recovered. During his time in India, Jack, who spoke Hindi and Bengali well, had, as the expression of the day goes, gone native. That's the thing, gone native. To despair of his English colleagues. Amongst the beliefs he acquired was that of reincarnation. On a rare visit to our home in Western Ireland, he encountered me for the first time and saw in me his son Peter, who apparently I closely resembled both physically and in temperament. Now, bear with me. Peter died in December 1938. I was born in December 1938. And if you believe in reincarnation, it can't come better than that. That thought, we would say in Dutch. He decided there and then that he was my surrogate father. And my real father, loved and liked it very well. And I cannot say enough in praise of him. He was a wonderful father. I couldn't have asked for better. Now, my filial duties were actually not all that arduous. They consisted, for the most part, in accompanying Jack and his good and faithful Peak Chang on our walks, which invariably terminated at the dropping well in Milltown. There, after the second or third pint, Jack did believe in having a few jars to steady himself. He did a little incident outside Coghlan, which ended so badly, and he would recount his many adventures, including his attempt to outfly in straight and level flight, obviously it had to be straight and level flight, the pride of the LNER, the London North Eastern Railway, the Flying Scotsman. Jack attempted this noble-minded feat, ensconced in His Majesty's latest aircraft, a Sopwith Snipe, which was the terror of the skies, the impregnable shield of all the true Brits, the impenetrable defence of the home islands. The Sopwith Snipe was nothing to fear. There was, because the Sopwith Snipe couldn't catch up with the Flying Scotsman. It shouldn't have come as a surprise to anybody, because failing winds or westerlies, when Jack went up during the war, the first thing he had to do was fly into his homeland to be absolutely sure that he could fly back when he was over the German line. So let's not exaggerate, it's just thank God for the Spitfire. His ambition for me was that I should join the Royal Tanks. Unhappily, I am prone to car sickness. And that is not something which works terribly well with a tank commander. I can't very well say, Sergeant, please stop for a moment and I bring up by myself. So I reflected a little bit, mindful of the biblical injunction that give is better than to receive, and of the fate of Jack's tank. I joined the Royal Artillery, and there on the table there is my cap, my loose cap from those days, which I wore. The orderly officer of the British Regiment wears his blues and a sword, plus spurs. Now, if he doesn't trip over his sword, I can guarantee we'll manage to get his spurs entangled and make a dignified descent worthy of Sopwith Snipe down the nest stairs and a somewhat forced landing at the bottom. But there we are. Jack didn't quite know that there we were. At least I was in the army. His daughter Mary, a distinguished psychiatrist practicing in London and in Oxford, accepted me as a super cousin, not quite as an older Peter, We meet at regular intervals during the year. But what have done class of 25? He's been left out of this talk. Donal came to Castleknock in 25. Unfortunately, the family finances took a downturn when his grandpapa Coghlan passed away that year and Donal had to leave. He was later to enter into Clonmel and study for the secular priesthood, ending his days as parish priest of Lucan, which is how I came to live in Lucan. Well, we'll leave it at that, because time is marching on. Time has a curious habit of doing, and we're running a bit late. So I thank you all for listening, bearing with me as I warble on. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And for those